Good day, everyone. Welcome to another Live with Kevin, another future episode of the Remarkable Leadership Podcast. So glad that you're here. And if you're here with us live, I want you to go into the comment section of whatever social platform you're on and say hello and tell us where you're located. And if you're not with us live and you're just listening later, stay with us because you're going to love this time that you're here. But if you're with us live, I've got one more thing I'd like you to do besides telling us where you're located, and that would be to simply engage with us. I want you to imagine that you were joining my guest and I around a table, and if we were having a conversation around the table and you had a question, you'd ask it. If you had a comment, you'd share it. If you had an idea, you would offer it, right? You would do that naturally. Well, we're not around a table. Heck, I'm not even at the same table as my guest, but we should think about it that way. If you have a question, idea, or comment, please share them because it will make a better conversation. You may get your specific question answered, and eventually it'll be a better episode of the Remarkable Leadership Podcast. And so thank you for all of that in advance. Now, because this will eventually be on the podcast, I'm going to do right now a live read of what the opening for that show will be. And Marissa, this is for you in 3, 2, 1. Leadership and coaching are joined at the hip, but generally thought of as different skill sets. Today, we're talking about leading with coaching, making it our approach to leading rather than being something we do in our role as a leader. Welcome to another episode of the Remarkable Leadership Podcast, where we are helping leaders like you grow personally and professionally to lead more effectively and make a bigger positive difference for their teams, organizations, and the world. If you are listening to this podcast, in the future, you could join us live, get this information sooner, all on your favorite social media channel. If you want to learn about doing that, or just to get the inside scoop of what's going on with the Remarkable Leadership Podcast, you can join our Facebook or LinkedIn groups to get connected in that way. Just go to remarkablepodcast.com/Facebook or remarkablepodcast.com/LinkedIn. If you'll do that, you'll be connected. You'll be in the know. And in the future, you can join us live. Today's episode is brought to you by my latest book, Flexible Leadership: Navigate Uncertainty and Lead with Confidence. It's time to realize that styles can get in our way and that following our strengths might not always be the best approach. In a world more complex and uncertain than ever, leaders need a new perspective and a new set of tools to create the great results their teams and organizations want and need. That's what Flexible Leadership provides you, but not until you get a copy. Learn more and order your copy now at remarkablepodcast.com/flexible. And with that, I'm going to bring in my guest. And here she is, Luciana Nu. She is the co-author of this book, Coaching Power. And she's a partner and head of Americas at the Preston Associates, one of the world's premier executive coaching firms. She's an accomplished executive coach and former CEO with more than 20 years of leadership experience at Fortune 500 companies, including Bayer, Danone, and Roche. She blends her strategic expertise with a passion for mentoring, serving as a board member, investor, and advisor to entrepreneurs and executives worldwide. Today, she's the guest on the 509th episode of the Remarkable Leadership Podcast. Luciana, welcome. So glad that you're here.
Thank you, Kevin. Thank you for having me.
So I'm guessing growing up in Argentina, if I remember correctly, you didn't think, well, my life's work is I'm going to be a coach and I'm going to write a book. So tell us a little bit about the journey that leads you here. Just in short, maybe give us a little color that goes on top of what I already shared about you.
First of all, thank you for noticing that in the book. It's a short reference, so impressive that you kept it. So yeah, I grew up in Argentina and I started my corporate career back in Roche in marketing. And I went through the corporate ladder at Roche, then at Bayer and Danone, expanding a little bit my repertoire of skills. And at some point, pretty late in my career, I was already in my mid 30s. I had a very clear brief from my boss at the time. It was upgrade the leaders. And I had 3,000 people in my scope at that point in time globally. And I thought, gee, how are we going to upgrade leaders from Mexico to Indonesia? And I decided that it was going to be through coaching. And whenever I believe in something, I tend to take it pretty seriously. So I became a coach, thinking that I would just add it as a repertoire to my leadership style, to my leadership tool set. But I never thought that I would do it for a living. And fast forward to 2018, when I decided to leave the corporate world, I took a sabbatical year off to define what I wanted to do with the second half of my life. And that's where coaching came back to the front and center of, oh, what if my life would be around coaching? And now, many years later, I can say it's the best job in the world when we get to work with leaders, but also, especially in my case, with teams. I do a lot of team coaching, and you literally see in front of your eyes the power of coaching and how, let's say, in a team offsite, you get a team that works with you for 3 days. They come, a team, they live in a magical state. Sometimes they come as a group. Honestly, they don't even come as a team. They are dysfunctional, having frictions, disconnected. There's personal tensions. There's misalignment strategically. And after just 3 days, they live in a state of cohesion, connection, trust, and alignment that it's nothing short of magic to see it happen in front of your eyes. And that is, no pun intended, the power of coaching.
Well, there you go. And of course, the book is called Coaching Power. So she's getting both of those keywords in there for us, everybody. So I'm curious, though. So you've told us now about the leading, what led up to being a coach and how much you enjoy doing it. Um, Writing a book is another thing, right? And so why the book? And you wrote it with Tom Preston. Why the book?
To be honest with you, the book came to us. We did not seek it out. And Wiley, the publisher of the book, came to us. They did a bit of research and they said, look, we keep hearing your name as the source of what they had in mind, which was what they called the ultimate handbook for leaders that want to lead with a coaching style. So they pitched the book to us, and we said, it's a long shot. We'll send the proposal for how we would approach it. And literally, I promise you, Kevin, this is a behind the scenes, by the way. I haven't told this story anywhere else. But we wrote the synopsis and we sent it right before Christmas and New Year and all that good stuff. And we forgot. We thought it was a long shot, right? And then in January, the publisher came back and they said, we'd love to do it with you. And then we went, oh, now we have to do it.
Hint, if they reach out to you, it is not a long shot. By definition, you are past long shot. And now you know. And that's obviously what happened.
And
if I had
exactly.
been
And now we
coaching
know.
you,
So
I'd have said,
yeah.
don't forget, because the odds are pretty good at that point. But listen, that's super exciting. And so then you had to, oh my
So
gosh.
then we had to write the book. So then we took it much more seriously and we just decided what the topics were going to be. We divided a little bit the chapters that each of us had affinity, and then we exchanged them so that we could cross-fertilize the idea. So it was really a labor of love. And then at the end of the process, we got together in person to really hash it out and even go geek out on some of our processes and frameworks and tools. And we, to be honest with you, with Tom, we learned more about each other's style and secret sauce of, oh, this is how you deliver this framework. That's how I deliver it. And in the process of writing it, we also had many of our coaches contribute with case studies that also enriched and were almost like a perfect fit to the topic we were talking about, be it powerful questions or active listening. So making it a little bit of a collective effort really amplified our ability to have different voices and different styles represented in the book, but also real life client examples, of course, anonymized and with a little bit of a synthesis so that they can be easy to read. But the process was, to be honest with you, very enjoyable. And then we went through the editing and the publishing, and now we're doing this fun part, which is to put it out there in the world and hopefully share with leaders that want to live with a coaching style why we hope it will make a difference for them.
I want to come back to that last thing you said in just a second, but I wanted to share with people that, if you read books, and I'm guessing if you listen to this podcast or are watching this live, you have an affinity for books, and I'm presuming in some cases that you use this as the way to decide if I'm going to buy a book or not. One of the things I like about this book is you do have a lot of case studies, and it won't be seen very easily. But if you notice, it's easy when you're going through it to see the case studies because they're in gray, which is kind of nice because sometimes they're integrated, and there's nothing wrong with that. But in this case, depending on your learning style, you might really like that, and that's a useful thing. I will tell you now, it's my inside baseball time, that I get lots of books pitched to us, some of which we never actually get copies of, some we ask for copies of, some copies get sent unrequested. But when I first looked at your book, the subtitle starts leading with coaching, and to me, that's the thing that makes there's a tremendous amount of great stuff in here about coaching, right? But as I said in the intro, Luciana, the idea of thinking about that the way I'm going to lead is by coaching is a different thing than saying I want to be a good coach. And so I'm curious about, we'll get into some tactical stuff and some skill stuff, but talk to me about the keys, the overarching keys to this idea of leading with coaching.
The first thing I'll say is, now that the book is out there, we've realized that the notion of leading with coaching really resonates with the leaders that have realized that the old command and control version of leadership is no longer effective. Right? You have to have felt that in the way you lead. The boss that tells you what to do and exactly how to do it and bosses you around, that is no longer a boss that gets performance out of people. In a world where millennials and Gen Zers want to be coached and they want to have the freedom to do things in their own way and find their own path, a boss that doesn't allow you or develop you into your full potential is just not going to cut it, to be honest with you. So the keys to leading with coaching, first, is you have to realize that there's a time to manage. Sometimes I always say there's three gears of leadership. There's a time to manage. You have to roll up the sleeves and do things yourself. There's a time to lead, to set up the vision and to show people where to go and how to get there. But there's also a time to coach, because sometimes it's no longer about setting the vision, it's about showing the people that the answers are within themselves and coach them towards that direction. So then the keys to coaching are essentially two key skills that we really unpack in the book. The first one sounds a bit counterintuitive, and is the importance of active listening. The first thing you have to do to lead with coaching and to be a good coach to your people is listen. There's the old expression of we have 2 ears and 1 mouth for a reason. And it's because listening is really the foundation of coaching. The second core skill is to ask powerful questions, to the point of why leading with coaching is important. In a world where you can Google any answer, the leader that leads by thinking that all they can provide is having all the answers is obsolete. It's about asking the powerful questions that will get people to think, that will get people to inquire, to find different avenues and approaches. Coaching literally expands your thinking because it puts you in a place where you are the ones that implicitly have the answers within you, and the coach is there to guide the process of questions so that you get to the right answer. Because guess what? When the person that you're coaching, let's say in this case, team member, gets to their own authentic answer, their commitment to the follow through of making it happen is going to be exponentially stronger, right?
Yeah, for sure. So the next thing I wanted to ask you, you've mostly, I think, answered, but I'm going to ask it anyway because I want to make sure. You said that the old command and control approach is not going to be effective anymore, and I completely agree. There are moments. In moments of chaos where that's still effective, but it's relatively very small percentage of the time. And so you said, hey, we've got to build some new skills. If people don't see that need to shift, it's going to be hard to shift. So the question is, what is the mindset shift that's needed I think you answered that. But how do we coach a leader in the direction of that mindset shift that says, hey, doing it that way probably won't get me the results I need? How do you help people do that?
I think that the mindset shift happens, especially when people are in that transition going from manager to leader. And it's realizing that it's no longer going to be about you getting things done yourself. When you're a leader, you have to get things done through others. You're no longer the doer, you're the leader. You're the one that sets the vision, that equips the team, that actually puts the team together. So that mindset shift is to realize that the manager doer mode is okay. If I was spending 8 hours working, maybe now I have to spend 10 hours and maybe 12 hours. There's a moment in which that ability to get things done through your own ability to deliver is finite. So the mindset shift is to realize that if you need to get things done through others, it's going to be about how you equip them so that they have the independence, the resilience, the resourcefulness, and the ability to, again, just ask the powerful questions, get to the answers themselves, and then pave the way and go the way and walk the talk to that. So the mindset shift is all about realizing it's no longer going to cut it if I'm the one doing the doing.
So, agree 100%. So, we could spend the rest of our time on those two things you mentioned, which is listening and questions. And there's great stuff in this book about that. And that's not what I want to do. Because number one, I want to take us to some places that I think you're providing stuff that people haven't thought about as much. And that's where I'd like to spend a little bit of time if we can. And one of those places is you bring up a really important point that we need to talk about. And that is, as a leader, as a coach, we have biases, and
Mm-hmm.
our biases can get in the way of us doing this well, even doing it in how we're intending to, or what our intention is. So give us some, let's talk about that. You're nodding like you agree with me, but I want you to talk to us about how we check our biases, understand them, and keep them in check, if you will.
Mm-hmm. Thank you for zooming in that, because it's one of my favorites. When we coach coaches to be good coaches, it's one of the first things that we try to do. The easiest path to get your listeners to connect with this is biases are actually very connected with your values. So when you are biased about something or someone, it's usually linked to the things you believe to be true in life. For example, if one of your key values is fairness, and as a coach, you're listening to a client story where you're realizing or thinking in your head that client is not being fair, you will, as a coach, have a bias to maybe let that value of fairness get in the way of how you're going to coach that person. So value sometimes can get in the way of curiosity. So what you need to do when you detect a bias that is coming up, and as coaches, by the way, we develop this ability to zoom out of ourselves and see the meta part of it. You see yourself, you see the client, you see what's happening. You almost zoom out of your body to see the situation and come back to it. So when you zoom out and you're like, ooh, this is me, getting a bit biased in how I asked that question, a little bit loaded because of how important fairness is to me as a coach, then you have to de-escalate yourself a little bit to that and stay in a place of curiosity. So then you can ask your client, instead of saying, were you being fair in that situation? Which, by the way, is a bad coaching question because it's a yes or no question, as you will learn in the book. So that in itself, as a coach, already tells you, yeah, I'm getting out of my, brilliant zone by asking a closed-ended question. So instead of taking it to the fairness space, you can frame it differently and say, if we apply a lens of how is the situation feeling to that person, what would it feel like to them? And maybe fairness will come up and maybe fairness will not, and then you will understand the logic of your client much more. So checking your biases is also about, as a coach, staying very self-aware of what buttons are being triggered in you and not acting on them. It's human, it's natural, but you just have to be capable to zoom out, check it and come back to a place that is rooted in curiosity to check for biases. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I love this idea of zooming out. And I almost think about it like you're a silent drone, right? Like you're looking at the interaction dispassionately in a third, as a party. And the more that we can do that, zooming out, to use your language, the better chance we have. Because if we can, once we do that, then we can, it's easier to see the button being pushed than when we're
Yeah.
in it, right? And it's absolutely. So I often think about that as, how do I think about the process of what's happening here, not the content of the conversation? And if I can move to the process of how this conversation is taking place, and that's the place where we've got a better chance of dealing with those biases, because now we're a little more detached from them, right?
100%.
There's another thing that I love that you talked about, and everyone who's listening or watching us would say, well, visualizing results is really important, and helping people, like, and anything you read about goal setting, everyone has said it, like, you got to visualize. I could tell you 12 stories about the power of visualization. I know you could do the same. But you spend some time talking about, how do we help others visualize? Sometimes as a leader, we have built that skill. It's one of the many reasons why we may have been promoted or we find ourselves in this role. But as a coach, we have to help others with that skill. What is your advice to us about helping others get there? Maybe to help ourselves, but I'm
Mhm.
really asking it about, how do we help others do that? Because until they see that, it's going to be really hard for them to make the adjustments they need to make, right?
Yeah, totally. So the first thing I'll say in terms of visualizing is take it back to something you have probably already seen. When we watch the Olympics, and I remember always Michael Phelps with the big, music headphones and totally game face. What an athlete is doing there is visualizing every stroke, the moment they jump on the pool, how the water is going to feel. They visualize it in 3D, in 4D, in high definition, because they want everything to feel as real as possible. Because guess what? The brain doesn't know the difference between that visualization and reality. So you're priming the brain to accept that to be true. And even results that you think are unimaginable, your brain starts to accept them and it doesn't fight them anymore. So that's why as coaches, we put our clients in the zone of visualization, because you turn off the part of your brain that is going to be questioning everything, and you allow it to see it as possible and true. And then you coach the person into the skills that will take to win that gold medal. So that's the first thing that we do, is explain the neuroscience of visualization, so that it's more than just a feel-good thing. There's real power in it. The second thing that we do with clients is we help them anchor moments of visualization in a moment of their day when it feels like it belongs there. Some clients love, don't ask me why, to visualize in the shower. Other clients love to visualize when they are commuting. Other clients love to visualize when they're walking the dog. So you want to find a place where they are alone, when they are undisturbed, when they have place to travel inwards and do that visualization process. And we just let them pick. We're one of the other skills of coaching is you have to suspend your judgment. So we've heard all sorts of unusual places to
Might be a
visualize,
long
but we go
shower.
with
That's
it,
all I can say.
It's
It might be a long shower.
exactly. So then we allow them, and we let them choose the space. The space and the moment actually does make a difference. And then we give them tips and tricks like the ones that we unpack in the book for how to visualize, how to see yourself in 3D, how to make it feel like you literally jumped in the pool. Is the water cold or tempered? Is the effortless stroke getting you faster? How are you turning in the pool? So we help them do it, and then we get them to practice. And we also help them practice visualization in a tough environment. Let me give you a personal example. In my corporate days, I was leading a project in which, like, you literally couldn't win. Everything was choosing between the two of the lesser evils, or the three of the lesser evils. It was just the nature of the project. And I had to present to the board once a month, and it was always bad news. Like, I couldn't win. So I would visualize that board presentation. I would be prepared for being challenged and being on the spot. And I would even have hyped myself up with a song, Titanium from Sia and someone else. But the song says, "You're bulletproof, nothing to lose, fire away, fire away." And it helped me visualize. So I wasn't visualizing a perfect ending. I was visualizing that I was going to be challenged and that I would raise to the occasion. So we also coach clients to not only expect the perfect path, but also build that muscle memory to, even when they are challenged, be okay with it, have that presence, have that gravitas, so that they can take the fire and still raise to the occasion. Does that give you some ideas?
Absolutely. I love that. Thank you for sharing that. There's an equation in the book. Most of you came today and you weren't expecting there to be math, but I do have a little math for you today, because I don't care how long someone's been leading or at what level they're leading. They're always thinking about the performance of their team or of their team members. And you and Tom share what you call the performance equation. Don't worry, everybody. It's not a lot of math here. But there are three. So performance equals, and there's two things. And I think one of them everyone would agree with. I'm going to say, in fact, some people would say the equation is performance equals competence. But you say there's more to it than that. So talk about the performance equation.
Thank you. And this disclaimer to your audience, I'll geek out briefly on it because it really gets me going. So the equation is what we call P equals C times A squared. The P stands for performance, which is what does success look like for you, right? It's very important, by the way, that leaders define their own definition of success. A lot of people don't know what success looks like for them. They accept someone else's version of success and they haven't pressure tested, is that success for me? How do I define success? So we get them to define the P of the performance equation. Then P equals C. C stands for capabilities. And it's very important that as a leader, we know what the competencies, what the capabilities need to be. But the premise of the equation is that P equals C times A squared. A stands for attitude. And the reason why attitude is squared is that it's actually a limitless driver of your performance. You get to choose your attitude, your mindset, your behaviors every time you show up to something. It's limitless because you have boundless amounts of how you decide you want to show up today. Today, I want to be the advocate. No, today I need to be the charmer. In this meeting, being the fighter is not going to serve me well. Being the champion is the attitude that I need to bring and the behavior that I need to showcase. So it's really about reminding leaders that we get to choose how we show up and remembering that it has a limitless driver, because in capabilities, there's only so many PhDs you can hire. There's only so many, full-time employees you can have in a team. There's only so many organization design exercises you can do, but at some point capabilities are finite and attitude is limitless. And that's what we help leaders see, is that they can drive disproportionate results of performance by choosing and coaching their teams to the right attitude, which is nothing other than behavior and mindset.
Perfect. So, and I love that you said you're framing attitude as mindset and behavior, which is helpful, I think. So, if we're going to lead through coaching or with coaching, right? If coaching is going to be the way in which we lead, having written a number of books about leading at a distance, long distance, and all that stuff, and of course, we've all lived through that, and most leaders are still, many leaders, of course, are still leading folks at a distance in some way, shape, or form. My question is, what specifically would you say about coaching at a distance or remotely or virtually or whatever word you want to use? Is there something specific you would want to add or make us aware of when we're doing it at distance?
Thank you for that zoom in, because context does make a difference to the coaching space, right? So the first thing I'll say is if you're going to go into coaching mode with someone at a distance, try to curate their context a little bit. If they're in a room where people will hear the conversation, take a moment to say, would you mind maybe putting your AirPods on or your headphones on? You want to create the same moment of privacy that we would have in a one-on-one session, right? You want to create psychological safety, because if you go full on in coaching mode and asking a person to unpack difficult feelings or a challenge, and they are in an open office space, and you can tell that they are not sharing too much because of that sensation of being exposed, you have to almost say, take 1 minute. Yes, take 1 minute to find the space where you and I can be just you and I. Go to a little booth, go to a different, if you have your kids running around you, maybe take a moment and go to a private room in your house, so that we can have a better quality conversation, because otherwise the quality of the context will inform the quality of the content. And if we don't have the right context, the content of that coaching conversation is not going to be as good. So that's the first hygiene factor. Don't underestimate it. I've made that mistake even as a coach. I took a chemistry session and I could tell that the person was in a space where they didn't feel safe to speak, and I should have said, let's either reschedule or go to a different place. So don't underestimate the importance of the context. The second one is stay in a place of curiosity with the power questions that we really unpack in the book. Get to the definition of success of that person in terms of what do you want, right? And get them to define what they want, but also unpack what is going on today. What would success look like for you? What is getting in the way of you getting to that? What have you tried? What has worked? What hasn't worked? What is the cost of doing nothing? So you stay in that what mode in a virtual environment, because you want to not cut to the chase and you want to surface some things that are less than obvious. So stay in the what in a remote environment, especially more than you typically would, because if the what is clear, then it's much easier to get to the how. Who does what by when, and how will you make it happen? So especially in a remote environment, keeping that trilogy shape of one of the frameworks we unpack is going to really help you make it to the end of that conversation feeling, for that person that you've coached, feeling that they got something very tangible at the end of that. I think it's easier when you do it in person, because you know that you have to stop at a certain time, but keeping that architecture in a virtual environment is really going to be helpful. And that gives you then the permission to repeat that architecture the next time you have that virtual conversation.
Yeah, that's awesome. I love that. I've got a couple things I want us to do before we finish. I'm going to sort of shift gears, if you will, because I want to talk about you. I want to ask you, Luciana, what do you do for fun?
What do I do for fun? Well, I'm eclectic in terms of how I have my fun. First of all, I'm a big time crazy music person. If you look at my phone with my playlist, you can't tell who's that person, right? The people that are very, one lane of music, that's not me. I have everything from pop to classic to funk, old, new. I still go to concerts. Still, my god kids think I'm the cool aunt because I go to like new stuff and I explore new music all the time. So music is like my escape. I really don't know what humans would do without music. So a big part of my fun time has to do with going to concerts and listening to new music. Something pretty pedestrian that I do for fun is just to watch movies and series and all that good stuff. It's a little more relaxed than the music part, but I get a lot out of that, and just hanging out with family and friends. Nothing too extreme. And every few years we'll take with my husband a good trip. So this year we're going to Sicily and Sardinia and having a good solid 3 weeks of travel and good food. So that's a lot of fun for me as well.
There you go. Um, Two more questions. The next one is, what are you reading these days?
I'm reading something unexpected, and I'll tell you the backstory to it. it's a book called The Boiling Frog, and it's written by a UK doctor. And the story is how the system puts so much pressure on doctors today that it starts to be a little bit like the boiling frog phenomenon. But this metaphor, I think, translates to leaders, right, in their leadership environment, which is you're in that pressure cooker and you're getting adapted to the environment, but at some point there's no longer enough adaptation. You're gonna boil past the point, and you're gonna get into burnout. So this doctor developed a coaching system for doctors where they can go past the boiling frog point and stay in what he calls the jacuzzi place, which is the coaching zone. And it has very quirky illustrations with the frog in the pot or in the jacuzzi. And the jacuzzi is coaching moments for doctors to stay in a place that, yeah, it raises the temperature, but it's also comfortable enough to get you to relax and to coach yourself and to coach others. So it's very deep, but it's very cleverly simplified to make the metaphor really land with fast-paced professions like doctors. But I think it also travels to leaders. So it was interesting to discover it, and I'm now gonna use it, and I'm even thinking of, in coaching, sometimes we want that comfort zone of the jacuzzi to work, but I said, what about the cold plunge, right? Because sometimes we need to be stretched out of our comfort zone. So I started to picture the frog in a cold plunge moment to stretch it out of its comfort zone and then go back to the jacuzzi. So anyway, that's my own segue into the book and more.
We will have the information about the boiling frog, as well as Luciana and her co-author Tom Preston's book, Coaching Power. That'll all be in the show notes. You can find that, of course. But where do you want to point us? Is there anything that you want so people can learn more about you, find out about you? Where do you want to point people before we finish up?
Well, first of all, feel free to connect with me on LinkedIn. My profile, Luciana Nunez. I'm based in New York. Feel free to go to our website, www.theprestonassociates.com, where you get to see the work that we do with teams, one-on-one, across different geographies. We coach people from San Francisco all the way to Hong Kong and everything in between. And the website will give you quite a bit of info. And if you want to get the book, you can get it anywhere you buy your books, Amazon, the Preston Associates as well, Birch. There's a website. I'm now drawing a blank, but I know you'll have it in your links later, so that people want to buy more orders, they can get a little bit of a discount there. So feel free to reach out.
We'll make sure all of that is in the show notes for you all. Before we go, and before I say goodbye to Luciana, I want to ask you all a question that I ask at the end of every episode. I think my new coach friend will agree with my question. And the question is, now what? What are you going to do now? Like, hopefully you found this interesting and maybe even a little bit fun and all that. But if all you do is say, hey, that was good, and don't take any action, what was the point? The whole point here is that you leave as a more effective leader, a more productive leader, a more confident leader, a leader who coaches more effectively. And to do that, you have to take action on something from today. Maybe it's about the performance equation. Maybe it's about just the idea of I got to work on my listening and questioning skills. Maybe it's the conversation we had about visualization. I don't know what it is for you, but what I know is that if you don't consciously think about what you will do with what you learned, you won't get nearly as much long-term value from this conversation. So that's my challenge to all of you. Luciana, thank you again so much for being here. It was a pleasure to have you and for us to have this conversation. Thank you for the good work that you're doing in the world.
Thank you, Kevin. It was a lot of fun to just geek out and chat with you. Thank you for having me.
It's my pleasure. And so everybody, if you enjoyed this, make sure you invite somebody else to join us. If you found this for some reason, make sure you subscribe wherever you're watching or listening from so you don't miss any episode, because we're back again next week with another episode of the Remarkable Leadership Podcast. We'll see you then. Thanks.